Today's Korean news. On the 19th, the KF-21 Bormi, Korea's first 4.5-generation domestic supersonic fighter, took off from the ground for the first time and split the sky. According to the Korea Aerospace Industries, KAI, the KF-21 prototype Unit 1 went into standby on the 18th at Sashin Air Base, where the 3rd Training Wing of the Air Force is located, after completing all preparations, including the ground run check for the historic first takeoff. On this day, the vertical tail of the KF-21 prototype number 1, which flew for 30 to 40 minutes over the Sashin base, has the number 001 and the national flag of Indonesia, a jointly developed country, painted side by side. A military source explained on the 18th, the first flight of the KF-21 prototype Unit 1 was scheduled for the morning of the 19th. In the initial flight, the first KF-21 prototype will be equipped with 4 European Meteor air-to-air missiles and will fly at a low altitude of about 400 km, 200 knots, per hour while checking the safety of the aircraft. Starting with this, the goal is to test about 2,000 sorties, number of single sorties, over the next 4 years. The number of pilots on the prototype, which currently has 4, is expected to increase to around 15. A military source explained, "I know that the landing gear will not be raised or a missile test will be conducted during the first flight. In the future, the KF-21 will proceed in a manner that steadily increases the maneuvering level, such as altitude, speed and maneuverability, step by step while conducting flight tests. It is checked to see if the rapid turn operation and the like are being performed normally." The Korea Meteorological Administration predicted that the weather over Sashin base would be good on the 19th, and if this flight is successful, it will be 6 years and 7 months after signing the main contract and 21 years and 4 months after the declaration of the Korean fighter, KF-X, business. Korea will become the world's 8th supersonic fighter. As a developing country, it will rise to the ranks of competitors in the aerospace field. Through the KF-X project in 2016, even when KAI started to develop KF-21, it raised concerns among domestic and foreign experts that it was a reckless challenge with Korean aerospace technology. However, as the largest defense capability enhancement project since Dangan, which cost 8.8 trillion won in R&D, KF-21 is about to succeed. The number 21 of the official name KF-21 Bormi means the year 2021 when the first prototype was released, and protect our sky with our hands in the 21st century is known to have taken. The KF-21 development is scheduled to be completed by 2026, and the Air Force plans to introduce a total of 120 KF-21s by 2032. Earlier, on the 6th, at the KAI headquarters in Sashin, Gyeongsangbuk-do, the first prototype of the KF-21 Bormi was unveiled to the media for the first time. On this day, Air Force pilot Major Ahn Jun Hye-in boarded the ground plane and performed free ground movements such as zigzag movements and rotation in place. Equipped with 2 F414 engines, the KF-21 showed off its majesty with a roar and sizzling heat. The General Electric F414 is a turbofan engine with an afterburner with a static thrust of 22,000 pounds. The Fa-18 with a maximum takeoff weight of 23 tons is equipped with 2 F404 engines with a thrust of 18,000 pounds, while the maximum takeoff weight is 30. The ton U.S. Navy's flagship Super Hornet, FA-180F, is powered by 2 F414 GE400 engines with a thrust of 22,000 pounds. The F414 GE400 engine is a highly reliable engine with over 1,500 units produced and sold around the world so far. A total of 8 prototypes were produced, of which 6 were produced as prototypes for test flights, and 2 were produced as rescue prototypes to be used for various tests on the ground. Prototype Units 1 and 2 expressed purple on the aircraft, Units 3 and 4 expressed the rising Air Force, and Units 5 and 6 were painted with camouflage. The KF-21, which has a width of 11.2 m, a length of 16.9 m, and a height of 4.7 m, achieved an 89% localization rate of the active phased array, AESA, radar, which advanced countries such as the United States refused to transfer technology to, developed by the Defense Science Research Institute, AD, and domestic companies did. It is evaluated that the spirit of domestic engineers is contained in the engine as well as the infrared search and tracking equipment, IRST. The main equipment the KF-21 will be equipped with is an AESA radar that detects and tracks multiple targets at the same time, an IRST that detects and tracks infrared signals emitted from air-to-air targets, and an air-to-ground target that detects and tracks day and night EOTGP, etc. In addition, the KF-21 is mainly equipped with European weapon systems, such as the German air-to-air missile AIM-2000. The KF-21 project is led by KAI to replace outdated fighters such as the F-4 and F-5 while using the KF-21 as a base force. Foreign research institutes and companies such as Lockheed Martin and GE of the United States and Martin Baker of the United Kingdom are also participating in research and development. Considering the long-term development period of 15 years, the KF-21 is being promoted as a phased development project, such as developing a system with basic flight performance and air-to-air combat capability from 2015 to 2026, and additional armament with air-to-ground combat capability from 2026 to 2028. It is known that 62% of the system development has been completed. As the KF-21 fighter is classified as 4.5 generation, its performance is somewhat lower than that of the 5th generation fighter, but it is evaluated to have high competitiveness due to its low price and maintenance cost. On the other hand, the KF-21, which has been developed, is said to have been designed with the intention of improving it into a fighter with a 5th generation stealth fighter or higher performance with a fully buried internal weapon window while going through the evolutionary development stage as Block 3 in the future. On the 27th, an MOU with the Polish government will be signed for export business agreements worth at least 19 trillion won, including a domestic tank K2, a domestic light attack aircraft FA-50, and a domestic armored vehicle Redback. It is said that this agreement with the Polish government and the Defense Export Business Agreement proves that Korea is not inferior in terms of high defense technology and international competitiveness in the sense that there has been little exchange in fields such as defense. Due to the nature of Poland, where there is no compromise trade, this MOU can be regarded as a de facto contract. In fact, the contract between the FA-50 and Redback was on the trajectory of becoming a reality. According to the Presidential Office, the government and the defense industry on the 18th, the government will sign an MOU for defense export in Poland on the 27th with Hyundai Rotem, Korea Aerospace Industries, KAI, and Hanwha Defense. Hyundai Rotem agreed to supply 180 K2 units by 2024 with the Polish Ministry of National Defense. Exports total more than 3 trillion won. However, as the Polish government decided to purchase 400 more K2s by 2030, the contract size alone is estimated at more than 8 trillion won. With the goal of signing the final contract in September, KAI will sign a contract worth 3.4 trillion won, 48 units. In particular, KAI decided to convert 8 of the 20 light attack aircraft TA-50 to be supplied to the Korean Air Force this year into FA-50s to secure the contract and supply them to Poland first. Hanwha Defense's Redback armored vehicles will also be contracted for about 670 units in the range of KRW 4 trillion to KRW 5 trillion. The combined contract size of these three companies ranges from 18.4 trillion won to the mid-19 trillion won range. It is known that there is a lot of progress in the actual large-scale export contract with Poland, as the Presidential Office cited defense exports to Poland as the first achievement of President Yoon Suk-yeol's NATO trip to NATO. While President Yoon and Polish President Andrzej Duda had a summit meeting during their tour, on May 30, the Polish defense minister visited Korea and inspected the FA-50, K2, K9 self-propelled artillery, and Redback armored vehicles. The book cafe of the Unification and Sharing Foundation, Yonggu, Seoul, where the memories presentation of 50 Zainichi Koreans returning to North Korea was held at 3 p.m. on the 18th. Most of the attendees nodded when Park Young-suk, a Korean Japanese who lived in Hiroshima and rode a return ship in the 1960s, shared his first impressions upon arriving in North Korea. Park said, "My brother who came to meet me said, 'Why did you come here? Live well there. Coming here is the beginning of hardship.' After saying this, my brother was taken to a political prison camp." After defecting from North Korea in 1999, Park returned to Japan. The event was a place where the Remember Memories of Koreans returning to North Korea presented in-depth interviews with 50 returnees from North Korea over the past 4 years with the support of the Unification and Sharing Foundation. Lee Tae-kyung, who returned from Yamaguchi Prefecture in the early 1960s, said, "I was assigned to Dedonggun, Pyongnam, and everything was painful. He doesn't have a raincoat when it rains, the raw toilet smells bad, and the house is infested with bed bugs," he said. Park Hyang-soo, a third-generation Korean Japanese living in South Korea, said, "When I visited North Korea in 1996, I was a member of the Chung Ryan family, but I did not allow contact with the general public and the security guards were constantly monitoring me. I couldn't meet him, but I later said, I heard that he was taken to Yodak concentration camp for a mistake and died of torture." Jiro Ishimaru, Secretary General of the Memories of Returnees from North Korea, who organized the event, said, "People who boarded the return ship believing that North Korea is a paradise on earth got off at Chungjin to check the facts and protested, 'Send them back to Japan,'" he said. Lee Young-sun, President of Unification and Sharing, said, "It is not well known what kind of life the 93,000 Korean Japanese returnees lived in North Korea. The spread of the COVID-19 pandemic is proceeding at a faster rate than originally expected. As the doubling phenomenon continued for the third week in which the number of confirmed cases more than doubled compared to the previous week, the number of confirmed cases reached 80,000 as of midnight on the 18th. The expansion of the fourth dose, which the quarantine authorities put out as a key measure against a resurgence, is still sluggish due to concerns about side effects of vaccines and a low fatality rate for people in their 50s. According to statistics from the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, KCDC, and each local government, the number of new Corona-19 confirmed cases nationwide from midnight to 9 p.m. on the 18th was 7,563. As of 24 hours, the final number of confirmed cases is expected to reach the mid to late 70,000, threatening 80,000. The last time the number exceeded 80,000 was about 3 months ago, on April 26. 8,340 people. If this phenomenon continues, the number of confirmed cases next week will reach 150,000, and it is expected that the number will reach 300,000 in 2 weeks. At the peak of the re-invasion in the summer, the authorities predicted that the number would rise to 200,000 and judged that the current medical system could respond, but there are analyses that it may have already exceeded the estimate of the epidemic. According to the COVID-19 epidemic forecast released by the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, KCDC, on the 13th, assuming the highest transmission rate at 41.5%, the estimate at the end of July was 38,300, at the end of August, 161,000, and on September 16, 206,600. It has already surpassed the government's expected range by more than twice. Although the spread of the pandemic is accelerating, concerns about the fourth vaccination remain. A. 53, who runs a restaurant in Goyang Si, said, "I suffered greatly from after effects after the last third vaccination." P. 50, an office worker, said, "They say that even if you get the fourth dose, you will get infected, but I want to get it right." As if reflecting this atmosphere, the participation rate for the fourth vaccination over 50, which started on the 18th, is low. According to the report on the 18th, only 131,482 people in their 50s, or 1.5% of those in their 50s, made new reservations for the fourth vaccination by 4 p.m. the day before. The cumulative number of reservations was 238,891, or 2.8%. Those in their 50s who were added for the fourth dose are estimated to be about 8.57 million people from 1963 to 1972 based on the year of birth. Controversy over its effectiveness continues. First of all, the fourth vaccination for the elderly aged 60 and over, which is the target of the previous vaccination, is low. The fourth dose of vaccination over the age of 60 has been conducted since April 14, but the vaccination rate is only 32% as of today. It is true that the fatality rate, the ratio of deaths to confirmed cases, in their 50s is 0.04%, which is higher than those in their 40s, 0.01%, but it is also a stumbling block that is far lower than the fatality rate of the entire population, 0.13%. Although the fatality rate and death rate are significantly reduced in those in their 50s and older than those in their 60s and older, the authorities say that the fourth vaccination is necessary because the prevalence of underlying diseases is similar to those in their 60s and the risk of infection with COVID-19 is high. The head of the Immunization Management Division of the Vaccination Response Promotion Division said, "We are aware of the situation in which vaccination is avoided due to the lack of effectiveness in preventing infection due to the occurrence of mutations. Are high at 50.6% and 53.8%, respectively. Since there is still a lot of uncertainty about the effectiveness of the improved vaccine and the timing of its introduction, it is recommended to get vaccinated now rather than postpone it." President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered an urgent meeting of relevant ministers on the morning of the 18th in relation to the strike by the labor union of subcontractors of Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering. President Yoon met with Prime Minister Han Deok-soo and emphasized that the rule of law must be established. Prime Minister Han is planning to hold an emergency meeting with relevant ministers and come up with countermeasures. According to the government, President Yoon demanded countermeasures in relation to the strike of the subcontractor union of Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering this morning. An official from the presidential office said that President Yoon, who received a report on pending issues related to Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering at a meeting of the President's chief secretaries on the morning of the same day, ordered that the ministers of relevant ministries should solve the problem as it has a huge impact on the economy. Accordingly, the Prime Minister decided to convene a meeting of relevant ministers at the government complex in Seoul, taking into account the serious situation. President Yoon also discussed the issue of the Daewoo Shipbuilding strike at a weekly meeting with Prime Minister Han for lunch on the same day. Prime Minister Han reported to President Yoon, the prolonged strike by subcontractors of Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, which continues for the 47th day, has caused enormous damage to our shipbuilding industry and economy, and the local community is suffering greatly. In response, President Yoon emphasized that the rule of law must be established, and said, the illegal situation must also be put to an end. Meanwhile, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering's subcontractor strike has been going on for the 47th day, and the Power of the People, the ruling party, is also expressing concern. Kwon Song-dong, acting leader and floor leader of the People's Power Party, said to the subcontractor union that did not comply with the court's order to evict on the same day and went on strike, "The shipbuilding industry and the economic situation are very difficult. Illegal occupation is an act of terror not only for the shipbuilding industry but also for the local economy." In particular, floor leader Kwon emphasized, "In order for our society to advance, we must not be dragged around by the law." A severe sentence was requested for a high school student who was handed over to trial on charges of injuring a teacher in his 40s by swinging a knife during class at a vocational school in Incheon. At the decision trial held on the 19th at the Incheon District Court's Criminal Division 14 hearing, the prosecution requested a long-term imprisonment of 15 years and a short term of 7 years for Group A, 18-year-old, who was charged with attempted murder. The prosecution also requested Army A to attach a location tracking electronic device and probation. In the final argument, a defense counsel for Army A said, "I was terribly surprised to hear the prosecution's high sentence. The accused is in his third year of high school and is in a mentally unstable state," he said. "The defendant is deeply reflecting on this case, so there is no risk of reoffending, and the defendant's parents are demonstrating a strong will to protect." Appealed. Group A, who had been suffering with his hands covering his head since entering the courtroom, cried so much that he could not continue his words in the final argument. Group A ended his final argument by barely saying, "I was wrong," with the help of a lawyer. Earlier, at the first trial held on the 14th of last month, Army A said, "I admit that I stabbed the victim, a teacher, but there was no intention to kill." A defense attorney explained, the angry defendant could not bear his anger and committed the crime. He continued, "I admit to the fact that I injured two of my classmates who were trying to stop the accused," he added. Army A is suspected of trying to kill a teacher B, 47, by stabbing him in the chest and back at a vocational school in Namdong-gu, Incheon around 10:30 am on April 13. Group A is also accused of injuring the hands of two of his classmates who stopped him from committing a crime. Earlier, it was investigated that Group A committed a crime by going out of school and stealing a weapon from a nearby household goods store when Teacher B pointed out that Teacher B was sleeping during class. Teacher B and two of his classmates were reported to be in a non-life-threatening condition. On the 16th, the first findings of the National Institute of Scientific Investigation revealed that the cause of death of an infant found near the Imjin River Unification Bridge in Paju, Gyeonggi-do was difficult to determine due to corruption. Gyeonggi Northern Police Agency said on the 19th, "We received the first oral opinion from the National Forensic Service that it was difficult to determine the exact cause of death due to the severe degree of corruption. We also received an opinion that no. In Korea, traces are left on the arm after receiving vaccinations recommended by the government, such as the tuberculosis vaccination, BCG, within 2 months of age. However, it was reported that the body could not be found, raising the possibility that the body had been washed away from North Korea. The police plan to check if there are cases that match the genes registered in Korea as soon as the DNA results from the National Forensic Service are available for accurate identification." On the 2nd and 5th, the bodies of the boys discovered in Gangwei Island, Incheon, and the Han River estuary in Gimpo City will be compared with their genes to determine whether they have a family relationship or not. Earlier, around 7 am on the 16th, the Army unit discovered the body of a male infant adrift near the Imjin River Unification Bridge in Munsaneup, Paju Si. The body, about 70 centimeters tall, was found undressed and decomposed considerably. At the same time, as remains were found in Gangwei Island and Gimpo Province, the police are conducting an investigation to determine the exact identity, but they are experiencing difficulties due to severe decomposition and lack of clues. The government will expand the support for medical expenses for side effects recognized as causality from the COVID-19 vaccine from 30 million won to 50 million won. The compensation for the deceased will also be raised from 50 million won to 100 million won. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, KCDC, announced on the 19th that it would open and operate the Corona-19 Vaccination Damage Compensation Support Center to expand the convenience of citizens who applied for compensation for damage after being vaccinated against COVID-19. The purpose of this is to operate a post-vaccination safety management system so that the public can participate in vaccination without fear while encouraging the fourth vaccination in preparation for a new COVID-19 outbreak. The Damage Compensation Support Center is operated as a separate organization from the existing COVID-19 Vaccination Response Promotion Team, and is in charge of supporting the compensation for damage caused by COVID-19 vaccination. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, KCDC, also raised the upper limit for medical expenses for diseases suspected of being related to the COVID-19 vaccine to 50 million won, and the death benefit to 100 million won. So far, 143 people have received medical expenses for suspected vaccine-related diseases, and 5 people have received compensation for their deaths due to myocarditis, capillary leak syndrome, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. The Damage Compensation Support Center will notify those with suspected related diseases individually, and if they have already received medical support or death compensation, it will be applied retroactively to pay the remaining amount excluding the previously paid amount without additional application process. If a person dies within 42 days of being vaccinated against COVID-19 and the cause of death is unknown even after an autopsy, 10 million won in compensation will be paid. There are 45 cases of unknown cause of death after autopsy reported so far. The opportunity to appeal against the results of the deliberation on compensation for damage caused by COVID-19 vaccination has also been expanded from the previous 1 to 2. Within 90 days of receiving a decision to dismiss compensation, you can submit an objection to the local public health center and, if necessary, additional documents. In addition to direct compensation work, the Damage Compensation Support Center also provides psychological counseling support for damage compensation applicants. Starting this month, the company plans to provide psychological support to heal traumas such as cases and families experiencing psychological difficulties due to adverse reactions after being vaccinated against COVID-19, and to support rapid daily recovery. The information system is being improved so that the applicant can easily check the progress of the procedure after applying for compensation. Separately, the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, KCDC, will continue to conduct research on the basis for evaluating the causality between the COVID-19 vaccine and adverse reactions, and expand research related to vaccine safety. By establishing the Corona-19 Vaccine Safety Research Center at a medical science specialized institution, it plans to provide evidence on vaccine safety through domestic data analysis and short and long-term research on the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine, and use it to establish vaccination policies. A recent increase in drug offenders has been confirmed not only in public offices but also in society as a whole, with the person who served as a Blue House administrator during the Moon Jae-in administration recently arrested by the police on charges of purchasing and administering methamphetamine in April. With more than 10,000 drug offenders every year for 3 years, the number of drug offenders in their teens and 20s is on the rise. According to data submitted by National Power Rep. Young Woo-taek on the 19th from the National Police Agency, the number of drug offenders per year increased from 8,000 in 2016 to 2018 to 10,000 in 2019 to 2021. By year, the number of drug offenders remained at the same level as 8,853 in 2016, 8,887 in 2017, and 8,107 in 2018, but in 2019, 1,411, an increase of 28.4% from the previous year. After that, the number increased by 17.3% to 12,209 in 2020, but decreased by 12.9% to 1,626 in 2021. In the first half of this year, the number was 5,988. By age, those in their teens and 20s experienced the largest increase in drug offenders. The number of teen drug offenders increased 3.81 times in 5 years from 81 in 2016 to 309 in 2021. In the case of people in their 20s, the number increased by 2.64 times from 1,327 to 3,507 during the same period. By drug type, the seizure volume of methamphetamine, a psychotropic drug, increased 6.20 times from 1,579 grams in 2016 to 65,605 grams in 2021. And the seizure amount of ecstasy increased 6.45 times from 2,601 tablets to 16,778 tablets during the same period. Drugs have a very high recidivism rate due to their strong addictive properties, so even first-time offenders who started using narcotics simply out of curiosity need to establish awareness through strong punishment, said Rep. Young. There should be a fundamental check on it, he said. The top management of Hyundai Motor and Kia and the heads of overseas subsidiaries will meet on the 22nd to discuss production and sales strategies in the second half of this year. As parts supply shortages and geopolitical risks due to COVID-19 still exist, it is expected to focus on more elaborate internal and external management strategies. In particular, as the transition to electrification is progressing rapidly in markets that Hyundai Motor Group is focusing on recently, such as the US and Europe, it is predicted that they will share opinions on measures to take more preemptive measures. According to industry sources on the 19th, the global regional headquarters meeting will be held at the Hyundai Motor Group Human Resources Development Center in Gyeongju, presided over by CEOs of each company, including Jae-hoon Jang, president of Hyundai Motor Company, and Ho Sung-song, president of Kia Motors. Previously, the construction was completed in the first half of 2020, and it has been used as a treatment facility for COVID-19 patients and has been used for its intended purpose since last May. The two companies hold a meeting twice a year with the heads of global regional headquarters and managers of production and sales corporations around the world. Neither Hyundai nor Kia posted bad sales results in the first half of this year. The supply-demand imbalance for automotive semiconductors still persists, and despite sporadic adverse events such as the invasion of Ukraine and the lockdown in China due to the respread of Corona-19, production disruptions were relatively small compared to other automakers. In the US, which is currently considered the main market, it has firmly solidified its fifth place in market share by manufacturers. In Europe, the company made a good lead even when the overall finished car market shrank. As of the first half of the year, it recorded the highest sales performance ever, and rather increased sales. During this period, the European market share was 9.9%, surpassing Renault and rising to third place. The industry expects the financial performance to have improved significantly as large vehicles such as sports utility vehicles, SUVs, and high-priced vehicles such as eco-friendly vehicles were sold. The Russian plant, which had been shut down due to a lack of supply of parts, was stopped, but the production disruption was minimized by moving parts to other nearby areas. With the exchange rate effect added, he received a good grade report, but it is not easy to loosen the reins. It has been half a year since the operation of a plant in Russia, one of the core regions, was shut down, and the sluggishness of the Chinese business side is difficult to find an opportunity for a rebound. The outlook for the global economic situation after the second half of the year is not optimistic is prevailing. Each country is responding by raising interest rates one after another as concerns about inflation are rising. Consumers are more likely to close their wallets as production costs rise due to the sharp rise in raw material prices, and concerns about an economic downturn are added. As large-scale facility investment is foreshadowed after the second half of this year, it is expected that the mid to long-term plans in connection with each region or regional market situation will be further refined. In particular, it is necessary to prepare for the refurbishment of the eco-friendly car production line in the US, which is scheduled for the end of this year, and also prepare for the preliminary work for new plant projects in Korea and the US, which will start next year. Optimizing the timing of production and input of exclusive electric vehicles such as the Ioniq and F-Series is also considered an important task as the transition to electrification is accelerating, such as the rapid increase in electric vehicle sales in major markets led by global automakers. A story was told that a resident who found middle school students smoking in an apartment complex in Busan and pointed out this was reported to the police again. On the 18th, on the online community Bobby Dream, 2 photos of the situation were uploaded along with an article titled "What Should I Do With Them?" Informant A said, "I saw middle school students smoking openly in an apartment complex in Bukgu, Busan, and what the neighbors said when they saw it." Person A said, other resident filmed a video that he would submit as evidence, but a girl in checkered shorts reported it saying, "An uncle he doesn't know is taking pictures and videos of himself to the police. Why the hell is this?" he wrote. Then she said, "When a resident asks me to go to school, I don't get ridiculed by what kind of middle school?" Person A said, "I called the police, but they came late and they only called me from other places, so I didn't see the situation in the end." He said, "I don't listen to the police, but even if I get into an argument that I don't listen to ordinary people anymore, adults say it's unconditional damage." Then he complained, "I don't know where the school is, so I can't even file a complaint with the school." Netizens who saw the post responded, "We live in the same apartment building, but the situation is very serious, it should be an issue, and what are the parents of those students doing?" Singer-composer Hee-Yeol has left the program under his own name after being caught up in a plagiarism controversy. Hee-Yeol expressed his feelings of injustice, saying, "There are parts of me that are difficult to agree with the plagiarism allegations that are being raised now. Criticism coexists." Hee-Yeol will leave the program after recording 600 episodes of KBS 2's Hee-Yeol's sketchbook on the 19th. It has been a month since the allegation of plagiarism was raised. On the 18th, Hee-Yeol said through his agency Antenna, "We are about to finish the 600th episode of Hee-Yeol's sketchbook. In order to minimize damage, we plan to proceed with the last recording by this week." However, regarding the allegations of plagiarism surrounding him, he said, "The most heartbreaking story has come to me that it seems that I have been denied the past time. However, it is something that is difficult for me to accept," he said, adding, "I will examine myself more strictly so that such controversy does not occur again." Hee-Yeol's sketchbook also announced on the official website, KBS has decided to accept his decision to leave. While the usage rate of tumblers is increasing ahead of the implementation of the disposable cup deposit system, the number of customers requesting to clean the tumbler is also increasing, and the self-employed are experiencing difficulties. On the 18th, an article titled "Why Don't You Wash Your Tumbler When You Bring It to a Cafe" was recently posted on an online community. Author A introduced himself as the president of a franchise cafe. Mr. A is giving a coffee price discount of 101 to customers who bring a tumbler, but he complained that most customers bring the inside of the tumbler without emptying it. Mr. A said, "Today, a woman came and asked me to rinse the inside of the tumbler and put coffee in it, so I opened the lid," she wrote. Mr. A said, "She washed the tumbler and gave it to the customer with the coffee she ordered, and she asked again, there was yogurt in it, did you clean it well?" He said, "Please wipe it home." She added that she would write down to bring a clean tumbler to the front door as it could lead to food poisoning problems. Netizens who have worked at the cafe said, "There are so many people like that, ice or water is fine, but there is a problem with anything else. I get really angry when there are too many orders, dishwashing is a hard labor and free service it's not. I'm running a cafe, but they ask me to wash the placenta, isn't that enough to pay for washing dishes?" Earlier, the Ministry of Environment announced that it would implement the disposable cup deposit system from December. The disposable cup deposit system is a system in which consumers who order drinks from cafes and restaurants are charged a deposit of 301 in addition to the drink price, and the deposit is returned when they return the disposable cups. Franchisees with more than 100 stores are subject to the disposable cup deposit system. This system was established to improve the environment by increasing the recycling rate of disposable cups and reducing the use rate. According to the Ministry of Environment, as of 2018, 2.8 billion disposable cups were produced at coffee and beverage stores. This is a 7-fold increase from 400 million in 2007. The number of buyers looking to buy their first home this year has decreased to the level of 2012. It seems that they are reluctant to buy a house under the burden of being forced to become house poor due to successive interest rate hikes. According to the Court Registration Information Plaza on the 18th, the number of buyers who purchased the collective building for the first time in the first half of this year, January to June, was 168,713. An aggregation building is a building that can be the subject of divisional ownership because structurally divided parts of a building can be used independently, and an apartment building is a representative example. Rows, multifamily houses, and office eatals also fall under the category of collective buildings. As of the first half of this year, the number of first-time buyers of collective buildings was the lowest in 10 years since 2012, 161,744 people. This is the second lowest number ever since the related statistics were compiled in 2011. The number of first-time purchasers of collective buildings recorded the highest number ever recorded at 288,815 last year, when house prices soared until the first half of the year, but declined by more than 40% in just 1 year. The number of first home buyers has decreased significantly in the aftermath of interest rate hikes, and the rate of short-term disposal within 3 years of purchasing a home is also increasing. As a result of the real estate brokerage platform Gilbang looking at the number of ownership transfer registrations due to sales over the past 3 years from 2019, in the second quarter of this year, April to June, the rate of sales of collective buildings across the country within 1 year of ownership was counted at 9.92%. This is the third consecutive quarterly increase after recording 7.2% in the third quarter of last year, July-September, and 1 in 10 people who sold real estate in April-June of this year sold it within 1 year of purchasing it.